Let me tell you something I never thought I'd say out loud. There was a time I didn't want to wake up in my own body. Not because of the pain, not even because of the chair, but because I thought the thing that made me me, the fire, the motion, the expression, was gone. This isn't just a story about healing. It's not about science, or medicine, or beating the odds. It's about remembering. It's about learning how to speak to the universe with your body, even when your body won't move. And it all started with silence. TikTok I almost scrolled past, and the whisper of a future I didn't know was still waiting for me. It wasn't the chair that broke me. It was the silence. I was sitting on the bathroom floor, cold tile under my thighs, one sock on, one sock off. The wheelchair parked in front of me like a statue, like a threat. I had been sitting there for over an hour, not crying, not moving, just watching it. It wasn't even the first time. I'd done this every morning for weeks. My grandmother used to say, if you stare at something long enough, it'll blink. I had stared at that chair so long I half expected it to stand up and walk away without me. My legs didn't hurt anymore. Not in the sharp, screaming way they did after the accident. Now they were just absent, like static. A shadow. A rumor of what used to be me. What no one tells you about grief is that sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's a stillness so heavy it feels like you're sinking under invisible water. And that morning, I wasn't mourning my legs. I was mourning my future. I had plans. I was supposed to headline a Latin contemporary showcase in Silver Lake. I had my eye on a studio space downtown, ready to finally start my own classes, my way. I had saved the down payment. I had the playlist already made. I even had the slogan picked out, "Move like you remember who you are." But now I couldn't even move across a bathroom floor. I pressed my back against the wall and let my head tip back. Closed my eyes. Tried to breathe, but even that felt like work. I used to live for movement. Not just dance, movement. Flow. Rhythm. That sacred language of muscle and breath. I could say more with a hip roll and a look than most people could in 5 minutes of talking. Now my body felt like a locked door. And I didn't have the key. Friends had stopped calling. Not because they didn't love me, but because they didn't know what to say. Some of them tried. You're still you. Your spirit still dances. There are other ways to move through life. I wanted to scream. You don't get it. My life was dance. Without it, I wasn't Camila. Not really. Just some empty version of her, stuck in a chair she didn't ask for. The doctors said I should be grateful that I was alive, that I had a chance of partial recovery. They said it like it was a gift. But it didn't feel like a gift. Felt like I had been cut in half and told to smile because my face still worked. So I sat there, breathing in pain like air. And I whispered, not to God, not to anyone, just to the tiles, to the silence. Please, let me disappear. And that's when something in me blinked. Before the chair, before the accident, before the silence that took up residence in my chest, I moved. That's the only word that matters. I moved. And in that movement, I found everything. I started dancing when I was 5. Tiny studio in East LA. My mom was working 2 jobs, so my Tia Carmen paid for the classes. She said I had too much energy and not enough places to put it. Turns out she was right. Ballet didn't stick, too stiff. Jazz felt forced. But when I found Latin fusion, Celia Cruz, Bad Bunny, flamenco footwork over trap beats, it was like my blood woke up. Like my bones remembered something older than language. I wasn't just dancing. I was translating. Every heartbreak, every celebration, every tiny act of rebellion, I poured it into my body and let it speak for me. There's this moment right before a performance where the lights go dark and your heartbeat fills your ears and you feel like a storm made of skin. That was my church. That was where I met God, not in pews or prayers, but in motion. People used to ask me how I choreographed my solos. Truth? I didn't. I closed my eyes. I let the music possess me. And I let my body tell the truth. I loved being on stage. But more than that, I loved after. The sweat. The high. The rush of strangers saying, "I felt something watching you." 'Cause I felt something too. I felt real. In movement, I didn't second guess. I didn't apologize. I didn't shrink. Off stage, I could be insecure. I could doubt. I could wonder if I was too much. But in motion, I was exactly enough. I had just started building something real. Teaching weekly classes. Selling out local shows. Working on my own studio, a space where people could come feel safe inside their bodies. Especially women. Especially those told to be quiet, be small, be soft. I had dreams. Big ones. Not for fame, but for freedom. And then, one night on my way home from rehearsal, sweaty, euphoric, glowing, I saw headlights where they shouldn't have been. And everything went dark. It happened on a Wednesday. I remember that. The air was still thick with sweat and music from rehearsal, that satisfying kind of exhaustion that comes after a full-body release. I had my favorite hoodie tied around my waist, my headphones in, my body humming from adrenaline. I took the same route home I always did. Sunset to Alvarado. Left on Beverly. I remember the song playing, La Negra Tien Tumbeo. I remember smiling. And then I remember nothing. Just light. And sound. And then silence. When I came to, I was upside down. Literally. Trapped into the driver's seat, the car tipped, my face pressed against shattered glass. I couldn't feel my legs. But I wasn't afraid yet, I was confused. My arms worked. I touched my face. Blood. A lot of it. But my brain hadn't caught up. I heard sirens. I heard a man's voice. Then metal screaming as they pulled me out like a broken doll. In the ambulance, I kept asking the same question. Can I move my legs? They didn't answer. That was the beginning of the blur. The hospital. The blinding lights. Machines beeping. IVs. My mom crying. My tia Carmen holding a rosary even though she hadn't been to church in 15 years. And then the voice. The doctor. Young. Serious. Probably kind in another context. He said words like fractured spine, nerve trauma, lower body paralysis. He said, "We'll monitor for signs of return, but we need to be realistic." I didn't hear anything after that. I just remember looking at his mouth moving. Nodding. Numb. Inside, something curled up and died. They kept me for 2 weeks. I learned how to transfer into a wheelchair. I learned how to catheterize myself. I learned how to say thank you every time someone offered help, even though I wanted to scream at them all to leave me alone. The day I left the hospital, they handed me a packet called Living with Permanent Mobility Loss. I held it in my hands, like a death certificate. Because what no one tells you is that when you lose the ability to move, to dance, you don't just grieve your legs. You grieve the woman you were becoming. I went home to my apartment, sat in the chair, stared at my reflection in the black mirror of the turned-off TV, and said out loud, "I don't know who you are." First, everyone checked in. Text messages. Voice notes. Doorbell rings with flowers and homemade soup and thinking of yous. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not because I didn't care, but because I couldn't bear the sound of their hope. The way they said things like, "You'll dance again. You're strong. You've got this." Strong? I couldn't even get off the couch without help. I stopped answering texts. Then I stopped opening them. I muted the group chat from my company of dancers. Watched the messages pile up, unread. Happy birthdays. Audition news. New routines. It felt like watching my own life from outside a window I couldn't open. And food tasted like paper. And music made me nauseous. And mirrors became enemies. The worst part? I started deleting footage of myself dancing. Years of performances, solo pieces, improv reels gone. Not out of spite. Out of self-preservation. 'Cause watching them made my body ache in a way painkillers couldn't touch. My physical therapist kept telling me, "You have to try. The brain needs the message." I nodded. I tried. But every time I lifted my torso, tried to shift my hips, tried to engage muscles that had once leapt into action like fire, nothing. I began to hate my body. Not because it hurt, but because it had betrayed me. This thing that had once been my temple, my medium, my weapon, my joy, now felt like a prison. And worse, I started to believe what the world silently teaches people in wheelchairs, that I was less, invisible, sad, tragic. One night, I wheeled into the kitchen and found a flyer from a dance collective I used to choreograph with. Fall showcase, submissions open. I stared at it. Then I tore it in half. Then into quarters. Then into nothing. I was done. The studio idea? Dead. The students I wanted to teach? Better off without me. The playlists I'd made? Deleted. The spark inside me? Gone. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan and whispered, "If this is my life now, I don't want it." Not in a dramatic way. Not suicidal. Just empty. Like I had already left the building and forgotten to take my soul with me. But the next morning, when I couldn't sleep and was scrolling in bed at 5:48 a.m., I opened TikTok. And a woman I'd never seen before, Esther Hicks, appeared on screen with a smile like she was in on a secret the rest of us forgot. And she said, "If you can feel it, the universe can deliver it. Don't wait for evidence to believe. Believe and the evidence will come." I blinked. I didn't know what it meant. Watched it again. And again. Like she was talking directly to me. Like she had crawled into the hollow of my chest and whispered, "Get up!" It didn't change everything in that moment. But it did something. It planted the first thought I'd had in weeks that didn't hurt. What if? I didn't tell anyone. I was too embarrassed. It felt ridiculous. Me? A spiritual person? A manifestation girl? But that video, that voice, stuck in my chest like a splinter. And late that night, I searched her name. Esther and Abraham Hicks. Law of attraction. Sounded like wishful thinking. But I was already drowning in despair. What was one more impossible hope? So I tried. Not a full ritual. Not crystals and incense. Just a notebook. I found it in the back of my closet, old, half-used, pages wrinkled. And I wrote 3 words across the first empty page. I still exist. It made me cry. More than I expected. 'Cause deep down, I hadn't been sure. Then I wrote, "I am healing. I am whole. My body remembers how to dance." I didn't believe a word of it. But I wrote them anyway. Over and over. And the next morning, I wrote them again. Something about the repetition felt anchoring. Not powerful. Not magical. Just truer than silence. A week later, I cleared off the top of my dresser. Pushed away the makeup I wasn't wearing. The unopened mail. The reminder cards from physical therapy I'd stopped going to. And I built an altar. Just for me. I laid down a scarf. Candle. A photo of me mid-leap from a performance 2 years ago, legs extended, hair flying, mouth open in joy. And I stared at her. Her. Me. Us. I didn't call it prayer. I didn't know what it was. But I sat in front of that altar every morning and whispered things I wasn't ready to say out loud to anyone else. I want to believe again. I want to feel alive. I want to come back. Then I started visualizing. To close my eyes and imagine my body in motion. Not standing. Not walking. Not leaping, not yet. Just swaying. My arms. My shoulders. My spine rolling like a wave. First it made me angry. Because my real body wouldn't move like that. Because it reminded me of what I'd lost. But the more I imagined it, the more I felt it. Not physically, but energetically. Like memory. Like muscle memory from a soul level. Sometimes when I'd open my eyes, I'd be sweating. Even though I hadn't moved. Something was happening. Not outside. Inside. The silence that used to crush me started to feel charged. Like the air right before a beat drops. Like something was waiting for me to believe. I didn't call it magic. I didn't call it healing. I just called it possible. And that was more than I'd had in months. Every morning began with the same ritual. I'd wheel myself to the altar. Light the same candle, vanilla and Palo Santo. Turn on the same instrumental playlist, soft, cinematic, slightly haunting. And I'd begin. I wasn't just saying affirmations anymore. I was inhabiting them. Eyes closed, spine tall, hands on my thighs. I'd speak as if my future self was speaking through me. I am movement. I am divine rhythm in a human body. My legs are not broken. They are building. Sometimes my throat would catch. Not out of doubt, out of power. Kind that makes you want to laugh and cry at the same time. I began scripting too. Whole pages written in present tense as if it had already happened. Today I stood up without pain. I walked to the stereo and played music so loud the windows shook. I danced barefoot in the living room and cried because I didn't think I'd ever feel this free again. I'm back. And it's better than before. The more I wrote, the more I saw it. Not just in my head. In my body. In the air. My skin tingled during visualizations. My breath deepened without force. My hands started making tiny gestures, like they remembered choreo my legs couldn't follow yet. One morning during meditation, I felt something, a pull. Like something tugged on the space behind my belly button. And in my mind's eye, I saw a deep violet light swirl around my hips and pour down into my legs. I don't have a better word for it. Felt like being plugged back in. I opened my eyes and whispered, "You're not dead. You're dormant." From that day on, my visualizations got more vivid. Not just images, feelings. I could feel my toes curling. I could feel the floor under my soles. I could hear the breath of an audience. Started to feel less like pretending, and more like remembering. And then the synchronicities began. A butterfly landed on my altar candle and didn't move for 2 full minutes. A random Spotify shuffle played the exact music from one of my past performances, a track I hadn't heard in years. A text from an old friend just said, "I dreamed you were dancing again." I hadn't told anyone what I was doing, but the universe had started whispering back. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was rhythmic. Like a beat just under the silence, waiting for me to pick it up again. It was a Thursday. The air was thick and my candle wouldn't light. I took it as a sign and left the altar untouched for the day. I was watching an old dance film on mute when someone knocked at the door. 3 sharp taps. Not the delivery guy. Not my mom. Not my neighbor. I wheeled over, opened it halfway, and there she was. Alessia. Same fire in her eyes. Same sleek ponytail. Same signature eyeliner that looked like it could cut through stone. We hadn't spoken since we stopped speaking. We used to dance together. We weren't friends. We were competitors. Always vying for the spotlight, the solo, the next big moment. Our last conversation ended in a slammed door and a muttered, "Stay in your lane." Now she was standing on my porch, holding an iced coffee and a strange expression. I blinked. "Hi." She smiled, awkward, soft, maybe even nervous. "Hey." I heard. "About the accident." I nodded slowly. 8 months ago." A pause. Then, "I'm not here for drama. I've been following your videos for years. And something told me I needed to come." She handed me the coffee. I let her in. We sat at the kitchen table in silence for a while. Then she said, "I had something similar. A nerve condition in my back. Doctors said I'd never dance full out again." I almost believed them. I watched her. "What changed?" She took a deep breath. "I found someone. A doctor. Not exactly mainstream. More like energy medicine mixed with neuro rehab. Sounds wild, I know. But it changed everything." I stayed quiet. She leaned forward. "I'm telling you this because when I saw your face pop up in a dream 2 nights ago, you were dancing. Barefoot. Crying. Laughing. And I knew I had to find you." My throat tightened. She pulled out a card. Slid it across the table like it was sacred. "I don't know if this is for you, but I think you're closer than you realize." She got up. Kissed me on the head. "I'm rooting for you. I always was. I just didn't know how to show it." And then she left. I sat at the table for over an hour, holding that card. The doctor's name was handwritten. No website. Just a phone number. And one word beneath it, neurosomatic. I closed my eyes. And I swear, for just a second, I felt my foot twitch. I stared at that card for 2 days. Picked it up. Put it down. Held it like a loaded question. On the 3rd day, I dialed. The voice on the other end was calm, clear, almost musical. "You found me at the right time," he said. No small talk. Just knowing. His name was Dr. Kwan. Half neuroscientist, half energy practitioner, and not in the fake spiritual guru way. He spoke like someone who trusted the body to remember what the mind had forgotten. He didn't promise miracles. He didn't talk like a savior. He said, "I won't heal you, but I can help you talk to the part of you that already knows how." That was the first time I exhaled. The sessions weren't traditional. No pills. No scalpels. It was breath work. Touch. Visualization layered with neural retraining. Vagus nerve stimulation. Music, lots of it. And stillness charged with intention. We worked remotely, then eventually in person when I had the strength to travel. And slowly, something shifted. First, I felt tingling in my toes. Then my calves began to twitch during meditations. Then one morning I flexed my ankle, just barely, and it responded. The first time I stood, with braces, bars, a physical therapist flanking me, I cried so hard I couldn't speak. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't graceful. But it was mine. I wasn't returning to dance as a goal. I was returning to dance as a home. That night, I'd sit at my altar, play the music low, and just let my body move. Arms swaying, hips rocking, spine rolling in place. It wasn't choreography. It was communion. I realized then, I had never really stopped dancing. Even in the silence. Even in the stillness. Even in the chair. The movement was always there, inside me. Waiting for the moment I said, "I'm ready." And then came the message. A friend from a local community center had seen one of my old reels. She said, "We're doing a showcase for artists with different mobility levels. Would you consider performing?" I stared at the text. My first instinct was fear. My second was yes. 1 month later, I rolled onto that stage in front of 200 people. No music. Just me. my chair,